Welcome back to Epic Exchanges. It's been a while since you've seen us, and you wanted more real people and real stories of inspiration because that's how you listening and watching responded to us the most. So that's what we're going to bring you this year in 2025 with some special topic-driven series. Now, February, as we all know, is commercially the month of love. So we're going to actually focus on that with our first series, but with a twist. And we're going to focus on loving and choosing ourselves first. So we have a few guests coming up for you over the next few weeks, and their stories are all going to be about loving and choosing themselves and finding themselves again. And I'm super excited to welcome Annette this week. And Annette, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience? Hello.
Hello, thank you, Kelly. Super glad to be here. Hello, everyone. So my name is Annette Moreau, and I am over here in the States. And I am a mom. I'm a wife. I'm an entrepreneur starting my own business. And really, I am hopefully kind of like the girl next door, kind of like you, in that life. Happened to me in some hard ways, and I've had to learn some things about myself. And so I'm in this beautiful process of, um, you know, doing the best that I can, working things out, not sure all the time of, what to do and who I am and what's best, but trusting myself, learning a lot. And yeah, rediscovering who I want to be now in this other part of my life to feel fantastic. And to be happier than ever. So super glad to be here.
Great. Well, I'm super happy to have you here as we chatted a couple weeks ago and you posted something online that just piqued my attention and curiosity. And so I'm excited for people to know a little bit of your story the way I've learned it. So why don't you jump in and tell us your story?
Okay. So really, yeah, what I would want to share with you that has been the most impactful, changed my life, hurt and was difficult, but also the most transformative happened when my second boy was born. And this was probably about 16 years ago. I have two sons. And my second, his name is Leo, he was born with more than one serious medical condition. And so that really threw my husband, myself, obviously, and our family life into just a whole context of living that we were completely unprepared for. And it was medical care. He had a kidney failure, so he was born in kidney failure, and we just were completely unprepared for this. I was completely unprepared for being a caregiver, for taking care of everything, for continuing to also have to be a mom to our other son and do the wife duties and all of this that was so overwhelming. It was emotionally heartbreaking to see him be so sick, constant procedures around the clock, and it was me that was doing it all. And so this was my life with him for years, and his health, when we thought it would get better, actually kept getting worse. And he ended up having childhood cancer. He ended up having a stroke. He ended up having an organ transplant, of which I was the donor. And so all of these things are going on with him while I'm still doing life. And I found that it was obviously very overwhelming emotionally, mentally, physically, with all the caretaking duties. And there was no end to it. Um, and I was guessing this whole time, and I was so miserable in the buildup of it over time. And and then within that, my firstborn started to also have medical complications. And so it was just this weight of this life that I thought was going to be a beautiful experience of motherhood and having holidays and trying to be a good mate. And it was not. My life was actually getting harder. It was actually hurting more. And I was scrambling all the time. So I don't know. I think a lot of women probably can relate to that. Um, and I found that as I was getting overwhelmed, as I was, feeling and guessing about how to do my life, I was just hurting beyond what I could tell you, and the build up of how unhappy I was, I can't even begin to share with you. And there was this sense of a loss of myself within doing all of these things, within what I call all of the stuff of life. And it led me to eventually a breakdown because I was just trying to continue to keep up, right? We keep up, it's going to be better soon, and it never was better. And so I had kind of a breakdown at one point, um, in my son's room with machines bleeping and tubes everywhere, and I kind of call it my my breakdown. And I realized, wow, like I I would like to crawl up in a ball and die. Like I hated everything. I couldn't keep going with the weight of everything. Um, but at the same time, I'm like, I know I can't, right? I can't run away from my family. I can't run away from from this life. And and I really kind of felt, an inner voice. To me, it was God talking to me of, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I'm like, well, clearly, like, what I'm doing is not working because it wasn't a matter of not loving enough. It wasn't a matter of not doing enough. I was doing all the time. Around the clock, I was doing. I was on the night shift. I was on the day shift. I was like doing the grocery shop. Like there wasn't anything I wasn't doing. And that was such a light bulb moment for me of, wow, maybe I'm doing that. Maybe it's a matter of what I'm doing because I've been guessing, right? Like that had been I didn't learn how to do things stressful life really well. And so, like, honestly, I've been kind of doing it like, hey, I'm doing life the best way with all my heart and all my good intentions. But, right, it still wasn't giving me the results that I wanted. So it was a really eye opener to go, wow, maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe that was the difference. And from that moment on, I was like, I had to question really everything I was doing because I don't know if you're all familiar with Dr. Phil, but he used to say, how's that working for you? And clearly my approach to how I was doing my life across the board, from thoughts, from emotionally getting triggered, from all the physical things on my to-do plate, right? So much of all that was not working for me. And so I started to, question that and do things different and look for help. And how can I learn? I didn't know anything about self-care. I didn't know anything about, like, you know, some basic life balance stuff, but I was not equipped, clearly. And I was so filled up emotionally with all of this. And that really started this hunger, this quest for how can I help myself to not drown here. I was completely drowning. And within that drowning, like I mentioned, I didn't know who I was because everything was about everybody else. Everything was literally about keeping fires from taking over, right? Keeping my son from dying at some points. And so I had to start learning, right, to do things in a new way. I had to start getting help. I researched and I took training and I got, coaching help, and eventually also learned about healing, which was really the most transformative, and started to kind of take myself back in that way. First was, kind of getting some balance back where I was so stressed, but then really taking my power back. And that was the huge part. Um, and I've learned some components that are really necessary for that. But when I started to do that, when I started to think about, how is doing this activity or having too much on my to-do list, how is that impacting me? Where's something in my day that's going to feel good? Like, where am I emotionally? Like, I really started to think about these different parts of myself, which I had no idea before. Like, it was all of life, all blurred together, and it was a hot mess, right? And I was like, I'm jumping all in, I'm gonna take care, and so I really started to be a lot more strategic because I had to. But it turns out that that was so helpful for me to not only, right, kind of bring some balance, reclaim some sanity, bring all that back, but then I could really look again even deeper and go, okay, what would make that better? How could I feel even better? How could I do this hard life if this is still what my life's going to be, which it did? My oldest normal healthy son started to have medical complications. And so for 18 years now, we've had this home life of extreme um, chasing health in and out of hospitals. And so I needed to be grounded. I needed to be centered. I needed to have way better coping skills. I needed to be so much more collected emotionally and not triggered, right? It was so important for me. I could see that the more that I was working on myself. But yeah, I had to go in and get all messy with that and find who I was. And I learned some hard things too of like, wow, I don't think I like any of that actually. So this is this process I'm now finding myself in of working through these things I've learned, taking myself back, but then making each part of my life actually go from surviving to actually be fabulous. Like I want to feel fantastic. Like I want everything. There's no reason that I can't or anybody can't if you know how to go in and do these things. Um, and so I'm all about that right now. And I'm currently, coming through this process and I love to talk about it. But having the tools, having the self-awareness, knowing how to recalibrate when things have gotten hard so you can come back to yourself, right? Having some inner skills and connectedness now to my heart, to my intuition, so that I can make decisions that fill me up, that are going to now help me change direction if I need to, if that's where happiness is calling, if that's where I'm feeling led. Um, but this has been the most profound thing. And of course, not anything that I ever would have guessed that motherhood would have brought me, but it was my awakening for sure because it was so awful. And now this reclaiming so that I can, be confident as I want to be, that I can have clarity about my values, right? I didn't know any of that. Like I was just running full force. Um, and so it's been a profound time. It's been a profound experience. And now I'm in this beautiful place of fine tuning it, if you will. So everything can be as rich as I want it to be. And it's why I do also the work that I do, because it's super important. And I know that there are other women just, right? We go along and we slowly take things on our plate and we're good and we give and we have big hearts, and we kind of give ourselves away unknowingly, right? We give our power away unknowingly because we didn't know things about ourselves, right? We didn't know where the line was for too much work, or where the line is for, what our tender heart can handle, what thoughts are supportive for me and how I want to feel today or in my life. So this has been this fabulous, really hard. I won't say it's easy. But I think that that is the point. I think pain is definitely a teacher. And so I have, kind of because I had to, right, embraced the lesson to move me into becoming really, I think, the sort of woman that heaven wanted me to be all along. And this was just the path to do that. So, yeah, now I'm, I think when you and I were chatting, I'm in this space of having to step away. I've actually stepped away in this final stage of doing my self reclamation to regroup in an alone little place in a cottage by the beach, which I love. And yeah, it's this time of healing and rebuilding and thinking about, and how can I, connect with my family in a better way? What do we need to do? How can we talk about life? Um, but it's because definitely of that awakening and that learning that these elements, these certain elements that we all need, are very, very critical to having a life that feels fantastic. So I'm all about it.
Right. Thank you. Uh, Something that struck me early on in what you were saying is that you kept waiting for things to get better, or, this will end, that things will get better. And it reminded me of my own kind of breakdown time. And when a friend said to me, but God actually never promises it to get better. And it came out of a question like where another friend had said, well, what keeps you going? And I was like, oh, I'm always like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just waiting for the light. I have that hope. And then the friend said, well, God doesn't promise that ever. It's not going to get better necessarily. And we hope for that. But what struck me, because you said so much in there that I hadn't heard before, just detailing the challenges of your children, you really it sounds like you were in crisis mode. Like I want to, I keep thinking I want to liken it to firefighters, like in California lately with the big fires that blew up last month. Or yeah, last month. And how even just trying to get things under control, they're constantly like one hot spot, another hot spot. Like it's not a step by step getting it under control because so many other elements are at play. And so you didn't just deal with the kidney failure, you didn't just deal with cancer, you didn't just like all of these things one after another. And I just kept thinking that as we age, as we become adults, as we become parents, or we have parents that are aging, it is natural, particularly for women, to fall into the caregiving role because we are nurturers. And historically, um, as women, we are the caretakers, we are the caregivers. And caregiving can be so much of giving away ourselves because we're so focused on other people's needs. So I would love to know you alluded to components of taking your power back. And I'd love to know for you, what were some of those in the midst of the caregiving for your kids, for your partner, your husband, because assuming if you were doing the grocery shopping and you're taking care of the kids and you're doing all the things, you were also caring for him.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? Or what does that look like even?
Oh, yeah. So, well, I think it was in for me, it was in grades, if you will. So at first, of course, there's the yes, I can do more. Yes, of course, right? I'm gonna, right, being a yes person. I can do that. I want to do that because in my mind, I'm thinking I should. I have this, what we would say is a belief, right? This is what I should do. This is what moms do. This is my job. This is, right, what this entails. Um, and so I had to start scaling that back. And I will add, and measuring that against where I now needed to filter, if you will, discern what was healthy and supportive for me. So, yes, I could, right, do the grocery shopping, care for the sick children, and try to straighten up the house today, this afternoon. Or in my mind now, which I didn't have before, how is that going to make me feel? Is this good for me to do everything on my to-do list? Like, even though I can, should I? And so I started to be a lot more thoughtful about if I do that, if I think that thought, even, right? If I let this reactive emotion happen, those sorts of things, I started to really filter that through like, what's this going to do for me? How's this going to set me up? What's going to be the result? And I had never thought that thought before, right? I was doing everything purely for, right, as you mentioned, how it was going to be good for everybody else, but not what was the toll on me. I had never at all thought about what's the toll for me and so I started to then be like, okay, how can I do, what's a win-win, like, or what's the compromise if it's a compromise, right? And maybe it's just for today, right? Maybe today I don't do as much, maybe tomorrow I can do more, but today, right, I had to start beginning to get me in the equation, right? We kind of know this, I think, as women, right? We've heard about the oxygen mask, we've heard about put yourself on the list. Well, we got to start kind of doing that, and we have to start doing that. I had to start doing that in a manner of which it met whatever my need was at that time. So now I'm a lot more, I will say, selfish about like my need is big, baby. Like I want to get like a lot more for myself because I deserve it. And I believe that now. When I first was starting, I was probably like, okay, I'll do all of the things on my list, but maybe I'll knock off one. Like that's how nice I'm going to be to myself, right? So you kind of start working with that for a while. But I would say that it started in that way of just looking at my life in a different way. Like how can I okay, I can't clean my house. My house is not going to be as clean as I would like it to be, right? So changing the standards. Um, wow, like if I don't know, let this situation with my sick child really get under my skin and impact me so emotionally like it has before, I'm going to be a puddle on the ground and be of no use to anybody. Like that's probably not the best thing, you know? Even though like I know that I am an emotionally based person, but I'm like, I can't be reactive all the time. How's that helping me? It's not helping me, right? You know, I had to start working on things in my marriage because my marriage was unraveling and on its way eventually to kind of an implosion, you know, and so I'm now still working with that. But yeah, so you just kind of start, I would say for anyone, right? It's a starting process of what needs to be different. How do you get yourself on the list? What's important to you, you know, and bringing those forward and measuring those with the to-dos, with everybody else's needs, right? And of course there's going to be some things that are critical that need to be done. In my situation, of course, is different, although there are a lot of people who care for others. So I think the package can come differently. Like you might care for parents, you might just have a stressful life. So I think it's overall, the idea is, right, it's the stress, it's the overwhelm, it's the whatever's taken over. And how do you take yourself back for that from that? You know, mine, of course, happened to be special needs and medical and whatnot, but um, I can't remember if I'm answering your question.
It's great. I love what you said about asking yourself what the toll is or what the cost is. And I think that's a great reminder for us all, especially if we lean on the yes side of things. Always saying to yes, answering yes to any question. Can you make cookies for this? Can you do this? All the things that we add to our list because of whatever we're telling ourselves in our head. But to take a moment, and I remember a counselor actually told me, like, always take, if someone asks you something, take 24 hours before you say yes or no. And that was a great lesson for me because then he said, and if someone can't wait and pressures you and says, no, I need an answer now, then the answer is always no. Because if they want something from you, they should be willing to wait so that you can figure out what you need in order to be able to say yes. Or do you have those things in place? And so when you ask the what's the toll, what's the cost, it's a great reminder to us all that everything that we say yes to means that it's costing us something, costing us time.
Yeah.
It might be costing us, let's say, that cookie example. Someone wants you to make cookies for, I don't know, a group of youth or something, a bake sale at school, whatever it might be. Well, okay, so there is the cost of the time. Well, there's also a cost, given our economy these days, of the raw materials as well as our time. And do we have that time? Do we have the raw materials? Do we have an hour or 2 hours in our afternoon or when we'd like to? Or will it mean that we are staying up late or getting up extra early and then costing ourselves some sleep and rest and all of those things? So super great reminder. I would love to know what some of the things you mentioned, that you were the organ donor for your son. And I know that for anyone to be an organ donor, there are things that you have to be in good health and a match and all the other things, and to manage for recovery, to manage your energy and your recovery so that you recover the best way possible. That it's a great learning curve, probably, in terms of learning to take care of yourself so that you can
Wow.
donate that. Was that maybe even part of the beginning for you, or were you just so in crisis mode that wasn't? that
I don't
timing wasn't
think
it?
that for me, I don't think that that had kicked in just yet. I think I was close at that point. I think I had started to come into the awareness of how out of balance I was before that. I think that was so my husband was actually supposed to be the donor, and then he got ruled out for kidney stones. And so they came looking at me, and I will I was angry. Like I was like, "Oh, can I give you some more?" Like really? So I think that actually being his donor was a bit more of my catalyst to this is so not in my favor. Like this whole situation, like all of this. Um, so for me, I think because, and I don't know if there's other women who can relate to this. So I'm speaking for these women. I really did not know myself. I mean, as we say in the South, bless my heart. Like I did not know what was important to me. I did not know what I needed. You talked about the cookie, like I didn't know what boundaries were. Like, so all of this was involved, right? And so for me, I guess I needed a really strong wake up call. Some of us do. Some of us will respond with a more gentle wake up call. Mine came big and kept smacking me upside the head. So, so yeah, when it was after that, I think, things were moving slowly for me. And the more that I started to just do like one little thing differently, I started to see the ripple effect of, oh, okay, that felt nicer. Like I have a little bit more energy today, or I have a little bit more peace today, or wow, like I'm feeling even just slightly better about me today. And that was encouraging to kind of like, let's do more of that. Let's figure out more of that. But um, yeah, it was probably the worst thing that I ever did as a young woman coming into adulthood was the fact that I didn't know who I was. I
Mm.
didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what I valued. I didn't know how I needed the structure of my home to be. I didn't even know that like having certain pretty things like that would just fill my cup. Like I didn't know how to fill my, my cup, right? So I could keep women pour out. That's so I think a lot of us do. And so, I was running on depletion for a really, really a long time. And so now having gone through this big exercise, having gone through and learned these things, I can show up still in a home life where the demand is still there. We're not in crisis mode anymore, but I'll say my oldest, my normal one, last year was on life support. Actually, this time last year, last February, we spent the entire month in the cardiac unit, part of his time on life support. But I know how to show up now in a whole different manner where I do not fall apart like an emotional goo, right? Where I know how to keep, my thoughts and focus on what is going to be the most supportive for me, for my family, what I will tolerate. Whereas before, like, absolutely, I was not that person. I was not that person.
Yeah, you mentioned the whole like oxygen mask thing that we all know. Like the flight attendant, put your oxygen mask first before you help someone else, or the filling, you mentioned filling your cup. And I have often pictured not just filling our cup and then giving, but filling our cup like it's a teacup on a saucer and we're filling it to overflowing and we're
Yes.
actually giving from the overflow. What's in the saucer? We're capturing it and we have some to give, but our cup is still full. So, what does it mean for you to keep your cup full? What does that look like?
Ooh. Honestly, I now know that who I am has these different parts, right? I have the mental part of me, the emotional part of me, my physical part of me, and then my spiritual energetic part of me. So I need to make sure for me that though each of those parts is filled up. And so I pay attention to that every single day between doing like quieting of my mind, when crazy thoughts want to come in,
Mhm.
to emotionally, what do I need emotionally today or in this moment? That's one of my favorite kind of self-care um, definitions and guiding tools is, what do I need, right? What do I need mentally? So what do
Mhm.
I need emotionally? Physically, of course, like, am I Am I getting physical with my body? And that's been a challenge after being indoors for so long.
Mm.
But I know that when I'm moving my body, when any of us, when we move our body, like it releases things, we feel good, right? So I want to be doing something in each one of these areas. And then, of course, spiritually as well, every single day, right? To love that part of me, right? To support that part of me. And sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes it's more of a, it's a more of a mental challenge day. But I'm very aware of it and I pay attention to that. And I know how to shift if I get into a funk or the downward spiral happens emotionally, mentally, physically, right? We want to go and have the bag of cookies, right? Like we want to, you know, follow that rabbit down the rabbit hole of crazy brain. Like I know how to work with that to come back to where I need to be so I feel good, right? It's coming back to that place where we don't feel like we've poured, right, too much from the cup,
Mm.
where we've compromised ourselves, right? How do I come back to the peace that I need, the balance that I need? Because for me, when I can stay in balance, that's where then the peace can come. And when I have balance and peace, then I can have happiness and joy. And I feel right in control of my life. Um, and so doing those things, I feel empowered. I feel in control, right? I don't feel like I'm at the whim of my circumstances and what's happening, what's coming at me, because I'm not going to be able to control that. Like I've learned the hard way. Like I can't control, an illness. So I can't control bad news. I can't control, right? And some of us may have heard that before, but we can control how I respond, not react. That's also very key. I no longer want to be in reactive mode because to me that's autopilot thinking. There's no control, there's no power there. You lose yourself. So, you know, I want to practice that pause that you mentioned, right? I want to be like, okay, that's interesting. One of my teachers taught me, that's very interesting that this is happening. So, how do I want to work with that? How do I shift to accommodate that? Wow, that was unexpected. Now my plans are changing. Okay. Am I going to just be annoyed? Right. I'm just
Right.
starting to be, we might say, more conscious of how we live. So at the end, I feel okay. I so did not like feeling yucky, feeling awful, feeling upset, feeling stressed and heartbroken and all like I like I don't want to go there. So I'm very like I'm on it. Like I got, eyes locked on. So, what is it that I need? What's going to help?
What do you wish that your 20 or 30 years old self knew?
Oh gosh. Um, I wish that she knew these things. I mean, I wish that she knew herself. Um, Obviously, I wish that she had been nicer. I wish she had had more fun. But I definitely wish that she knew more about how awesome she was and what she really had the rights to, right? She had the right to take her time making choices. She had the right to figure things out and, you know, travel or meet, date other people and figure out, what's going to be the best. You have the right to choose the best for you. Um, so that would have been great.
Awesome. If people want to know more about your journey, can we connect them with you?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Um, I share bits about my journey and these nuggets of living on my social media platforms, which really is just Facebook and Instagram. And then, yeah, I have some more information on my website too, where you can learn about my story and these components that I feel are really important if you want to, reclaim your life and feel great about yourself.
Awesome.
I,
Well, we will make sure to provide those in the show notes and for listeners so that if you're listening and you want to know more, you can go to the show notes and get in touch with Annette that way. And on our social media, we'll connect those for people. Thank you so much, Annette, for sharing your story and just being so real and honest because it's a tough journey and it can be really tough to be honest about where we were and where we maybe think we have failed or not lived up to our own expectations, and how we get there and how we find joy and how we choose ourselves. Because if we're not okay, then nobody else around us can really be fully okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Kelly.